Hello everybody, welcome back to the desk. Mars1, Initialize now in the middle,
Hello.
Nightmare over on the other side. We're bringing you coverage over here on the LJLOU, bringing you coverage of the LJL 2021 Spring Split. Welcome Initialize back to the desk as always, we've missed you.
I've missed you guys. I've been watching in the back room some storming games. That DFM Sengoku game had me out of my seat. So much fun to watch.
It absolutely did, and you'll get to catch more Sengoku right now, Initialize, against Burning Core.
Yes, Sengoku Gaming look really good. Burning Core, in fairness, have looked somewhat better. They picked up a win yesterday, I believe, and
Yeah, they
there
did.
is maybe some signs of improvement, but some signs of improvement isn't the same kind of rapid increase in power we've seen out of Sengoku Gaming, which maybe puts us in an interesting perspective.
Yeah, Burning Core did pick up that victory yesterday over Axis, and that was an all right game to cast over. Sam, it was all right. It was fine. I enjoyed doing that with you. It wasn't a baller game. It was a game that existed during Super Week, and I think that's the amount of we're going to talk about it in our podcast as well.
Fair.
Uh, um, coming into this match, obviously, I think it would be ridiculous for us not to be transparent with our audience and be honest that if Sengoku don't look dominant in this game, it's going to be a disappointing performance from them.
I agree. I mean, at the end of the day, this should be, if Sengoku are looking to be a top table team, and given that they were contending with DFM, they beat V3, they should be a top of the table team. They probably won't finish there at this point. They probably
No.
ended up going towards maybe a third place finish tops, I would imagine. And even then, that might be a push just because the wins in the pocket for a number of these teams. We saw what DFM did to CGA earlier. That should be a similar result to what we're expecting here, right? I mean, DFM put them to the sword in the fastest game we've seen in quite a long time. It might even be the fastest game we've seen this split. Heck, it might be
Certainly
more than
up
that. It was
there.
that dominant.
If it's not the fastest, it's the second fastest behind DFM Burning Core.
Yeah, from last year, I think it was. And
No, this split.
From this
Oh,
year,
sorry,
they did what they did on
gotcha,
this
sorry.
play. Yeah,
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Oh,
no.
Anyway,
You might also be
Like-
right about past week
True.
splits as well.
It has been very fast.
Anyway, the long story short, Sengoku should be looking similarly to put Burning Core to the sword, whereas on the other side, that means it's definitely underdog mentality for Burning Core.
Yes. With us thinking underdog mentality, we have to obviously look at some of the matchups that we're going to be looking at, and let's have a take over to the official stream very quickly, and let's talk about Gariaru versus Ramune. Now, obviously, we had very high expectations, I think all of us, coming into this from Gariaru and Ramune, and so far, both of these mid laners have had questionable performances on their team, normally have been relying on other members of their team to kind of assist them throughout the game.
Yeah, I think that is absolutely fair. We had a lot of hope for these guys. They've had Gadiadu in particular last year was really good. Ramane comes in with an incredible pedigree in the LJL. And it's been quiet splits from both of them. I think, honestly, for Gadiadu, it's possibly been worse than quiet. That said, today and yesterday, I've actually been... There has been, or at least today and yesterday for Ramane, we've seen a lot of good stuff from him. The Syndra's done stuff, nearly got them some damage out of this last game versus DFM. And Gadiadu, that Oriana game for the win yesterday over Axis was really good stuff. We need to see more, though, and more consistently if their teams want to continue pushing up the standings, or for Burning Core to start pushing up the standings.
Yeah, I mean, what out of are any of these stats completely egregious for you, Nightmare? Are there something here like the DPM? Is that a thing you're concerned by? Obviously, Ramune has the sum of his parts are also pulling up a lot of the damage. He's been playing more utility, so that makes a bit of sense. Similar, partly for Gadiadu, so it's a bit lower than the others, but even then, these are low.
I also think that neither of these teams really play around mid. It's
No.
kind of rare that teams do play around mid. You've basically got CGA and Nation, right? That's what you're looking at. You look at Nation and you say, yeah, okay, their team focuses around that area of the map, much like they did last year with Aria. I suppose it is partly due to the team compositions too, in terms of, have you drafted these guys, champions, which can actually do damage in team fights? You look at the Orianas and Victors and Azirs or whatever. Sometimes there are drafts which they can do well, i.e., the Azir game just now, when you've got low range AD carry, when you've got targets you can always be on top of, or you have something like an Oriana trying to get to a center through a Scion, and you're sat there like, yeah, that was a bit harder.
Thank you, Patrick, for doing that for us as well. Really appreciate the graphics coming over. Gentlemen, with this all looking at it, if we don't think these teams play around mid, which I think is fair to say around both these mid laners, and then if we look at how these teams have been playing, I have to just assume we're looking at the top side. We're looking at Crash in this jungle. We're looking towards Paz in this top lane. They'll play around the bot lane if they get ahead, but when we saw Sengoku get ahead in the bot lane, or similar to DFM when they were playing against Chris Gaming Act earlier today, they were just able to run it through. It was almost like there was no question asked. And then when I say the bot lane of Burning Core, this has been a typical topic that always comes up when we do start discussing Burning Core Initialize.
It is. Yuhi's stats are very poor,
Worst
frankly.
in the league.
Yeah, they're right. They absolutely are. I think Milan might be down there on some of them as well. But this guy's a rookie who's come in for like a few weeks, so we have a little bit more
He's
time.
my
Yuhi,
scouting ground boy.
exactly. There's a little bit of that there as well in the background. But Yuhi's been playing for a couple years now. He was kept on this roster despite some questionable performances last year as well, and the team has faith in him. I'm just not sure he's been rewarding that faith right now. And Proud had a great Alistair game yesterday, incidentally. He's had a couple games like that with the Thresh when he was lanterning people out even in the loss. But Yuhi's laning has sometimes been a bit suspect, even if more often than not lately it's been a little bit more stable. But not seen the most DPM out of this guy either, and it's a little bit questionable, especially when you're going into such a lane dominant pairing like Gango and Enti.
With that said, gentlemen, Champion Select has just begun, so no more from me or from you guys. Well, actually, no more from me. You guys can keep talking.
We're just gonna put the
it'd be
video
a bit
on.
weird.
Let it run.
Just a silent broadcast. Go watch the official stream. No, stay here. Please stay here. Gentlemen, pick and ban phase has begun. Oh no, apparently our producer is telling me that he's got it wrong. So actually, you have to deal with my face a bit longer. So, gentlemen, let's talk about how we think the top side of the map is going to go for Burning Core and Sengoku Gaming.
I mean, I'd look at. I mean,
No,
I look at it. I'm
too
like,
mad.
okay.
Doesn't matter anymore. Champ Select's in. Let's go over.
Oh, that was the smoothest throw we have ever had on this broadcast. But instead, I will ask you, I suppose, at this point, Al, what do you think about Sengoku's top side of the map? And then we'll run down the teams.
Paz just solo killed Evie in that last game. Ray Farkey's had some good games, been going way more towards Renekton than he has done in previous splits. He never really used to play that before, but I do think this top lane match is going to be really fun, and Wands needs to step up to keep it level with Crash, who's also been on a bit of a tear. Just want to say, guys, absolutely massive thanks to producer Patrick, who's come in to help us today on a bit of short notice, because Super Week puts on a little bit of pressure for the broadcast.
Definitely does.
So to read Yes and Patrick today, massive thanks to you guys. Appreciate it a lot.
He might be able to see the background, but we're throwing some hearts at that camera. But we have got some teams to run down. Sengoku over on the blue side, Burning Core on the red. It's Paz, Crash, Ramonate, Gango, and Enti in a rapid rundown of Sengoku.
And on the other side, of course, Burning Core, and they have not changed anything going into this game, which means it is still Ray, Farkey, Once, Gadiadio, Yuhi, and Proud.
And a few of these bans are fairly obvious. Nothing super out of place for Burning Core. But Sengoku, of course, ban away the Seraphine and the Twisted Fate, which, of course, very high priority mid laner and flex pick. And then Darius is that pocket pick away from Ray Farkey. He has just destroyed people on this before. It's not always worked out, but it's just such an odd pick to keep your eye on, and it does work well into some of these other top lane matchups, which are so common right now.
I totally did not just drop a coaster when I was picking up a drink. Anyway, right, it's the Thresh first pick for Sengoku coming in. This has been banned against Sengoku a heck of a lot, actually. DFM, I believe, banned it when they were on blue side last game. Just been like, yeah, we don't really want to deal with this. I guess the notable picks now up and available are still the Alistair and the Rel. Once going back towards the Graves, this has been a pick which has been fleeting in popularity now. It's not as popular as it once was, and once has had back and forth performances on it.
Yes, he has. I think that is a fair summation of the way it's gone. Of course, he has carried on this as well. It's also just not gone as well as he could have liked. They'll lock in the Azir as well, so that's already a fair DPS core. Does have a leave the Aphelios up to pair with the Thresh that was first picked as well. So it'd be a very strong pairing, and they did incredibly well off this pairing just yesterday. We were casting it, Nightmare.
And the hardest carry performances I think we've ever seen out of the AD carry role in the LJL have been from probably Arts of Felios and Spring playoffs, and then also coming into the I think it would have been the second match between Sengoku and CGA of last spring, when Gango had the Aphelios too, when he just turned around 35-minute team fights on his own. Now he's on form, been playing very well in the lights of the Callista, going back to the Aphelios once again, alongside Paz's Renekton over on the other side of the map. This is going to be a really fun back-to-front team fighting team from Sengoku, at least the comp's setting up to be so right now.
It really is, and I think there's possibly a shout for people like Ezreal. Sol yesterday, 2 games in a row, went over 1,000 DPM, I think. I think he did 1,200 DPM versus DFM yesterday. It was absurd. Like, there have been 1 or 2 AD carry players over here that have definitely put their name up. And certain champions as well. I think Aphelios, who are absolutely right to pull out as one of those premier options. I might also suggest that Ezreal has had its moments over here.
And Ezreal's now got a build which seems to be doing very well for itself. I actually think that'd be a really good champion here for Yuki too, because you got the Renekton, the Thresh, and the Aphelios, all of who are pretty susceptible to that poke, and you already have the Azir as well, which means that if you lead up around objectives, you can set up for a bit more range. And of course, heck, even having Gragas, who's flexed around the map between support and up into that top lane too, can do some work with the barrels.
It definitely can. Of course, it's still flexible. We've seen it go down towards the bot lane still. That's what kind of that joy of Gragas. We know it's not going to go towards the jungle, which of course is occasionally an option. But at this point, Burning Core have got to probably pick themselves up a top laner. Well, not top laner. Probably got to pick themselves up a bot lane rather, with the potential of a support. Exactly. With the potential of the support flex. That's what I get for considering it as a support briefly, and then getting a little bit lost in the moment. And there's that Ezreal we mentioned.
That means that now Burning Core have themselves a really good long-range follow-up comp, because you can have Azir striking from half a screen away, Ezreal from doing that from global with his ultimate even, Gragas coming in with barrels. If this is going to be an AP top lane Gragas, the follow-up damage with collateral damage and everything else from the rest of the team, looking pretty spicy from Burning Core right now. The question is, of course, if this is going to be the Gragas support, which I think would be more than fine, or whether they want to put that towards the top side, because Rayfucky's had a number of good performances on that already, and have something different in the bot lane.
Absolutely. Ramane on this Zoe, it's going to be an interesting one. It's paired up with the Nidalee. That's a lot of poke. You've got a Renekton to sit as front line. You've got a Thresh for repositioning. This will all be about kind of getting the spacing right, because it's been an interesting one. They'll lock in Karma alongside the Ezreal. Ezreal Karma is one of those intense level 1 options where you can just really get lane priority. And if they're going to be leaving Rayfucky on that weak side island, Gragas definitely foremost amongst a lot of those weak side top lanes right now. There isn't really a whole lot of matchups that Gragas out and out loses in or can't play.
I see. Burning Core have just locked in all of their own champions. They actually didn't realize you could switch champions in Champ Select. They just picked an order.
Did they know? I thought they... There we go. All right, that's kind of cool. That probably is, actually. I
was trying to remember if the Gragas and the Graves.
I think the Gragas got flex.
Look, either way, that's not exactly the most important point. I can talk about more important things. Yeah, Gragas does fine against Renekton, because Renekton wants to start slicing in, getting the stun. But the thing is, with the body slam being the belly slam rather, with the Gragas being so important versus melee champions, with the slight stun which happens after it, it means you have some really clean trading patterns, some really clean turnaround trades. Even after someone gets on top of you, you manage to belly slam into the queue, have the W auto as well. It's actually a decent amount of tank trade, and you get a lot of percent HP damage from your kit too, even if you go tank.
That's kind of an interesting point. I kind of agree. Of course, it does mean that Renekton Nidalee has been left free. And of course,
it's not
you
so
can't...
good for old Rayfucky.
Yeah, which, you know, for all you can be pretty safe in that 1v1. The 2v1 is notoriously deadly. And actually, Nidalee, assuming some skill shots land from laners, has got pretty good setup potentially in every single lane here. Gravitum, of course, for Gango makes that a point-and-click route as well, so that doesn't necessarily need setup aside from cycling through your guns appropriately. So I'll be interested to see where Crash decides to put his time. Aphelios Thresh in some ways would make sense, but then again, so does the Renekton. I suppose if you wanted to play through Ramane, you've got the options there as well if you land the sleep.
And it feels like Crash and Once as well, they're both similar kind of styles of jungler in this way. They are less the on-call jungler where the laners call for them. They are the more saying, I'm turning up here, be ready. Crash, much like, I guess Boogie in the same way last year, would just kind of turn up and exert pressure and make plays happen for themselves. I would imagine even in this game, because you have the Gravitum into Death Sentence combo between the Aphelios Thresh and the bot side, you can get some kills onto the normally, historically, very safe bot lane of Ezreal Karma. We're going to have to see how that bot lane goes, because the level 1 shove is so important to this duo. If you can ever break that momentum, much like you can do with a Caitlyn, things can go pretty badly for this Burning Core bot lane.
So, your eyes down towards that bot lane. I
Mm.
tend to agree. I think that will be where a lot of the level 1 pressure is. I think I'll also just be very interested to see what Crash decides to do. As we kind of said, like, he has got options here, whereas I think once it's potentially a little more reactionary. Of course, Gragas can offer decent setup. I think it's fair to say, but not as easy a gank options, I think, for once.
No. That being said, Graves, rarely the initial ganker,
Absolutely.
more commonly the counter ganker.
Mhm.
A little harder against someone like an Italy who is trying to be jumping in to get that finishing kill rather than trying to go in for the initial burst trade, I suppose. I think that, I mean, this is the thing, right? This is the dangerous thing about Sengoku's composition is that they have the ability to go wherever they want. It's not telegraphed. When things are telegraphed at a professional level, that's when things get a little difficult. Because even though you can have certain teams across the world playing Euronext and Italy, and you know that they're going to have a focus towards that. Heck, we saw players like Muujin around V3 being able to shield the obvious combo just by positioning at the right time, threatening the turnaround. Question is, of course, what is Sengoku going to do with their ability to run things around and do things in different areas of the map?
Who knows, I suppose. That's the joy of being casters. It's the joy of watching these games rather than knowing how they're going to go out, because for all that plans are made in the draft phase, they rarely survive contact with the Rift or your enemies. And right now, nothing super crazy happening at level 1. We can see Crash is on that quick recall, but that is for the switch to the Sweeper's Lens. It's a fairly common trick for people to get used out of the awarding trinket before they switch out. The one big discrepancy for those trinkets I do want to call out, though, is that Proud has gone back to switch out for the Sweeper, whereas that's not happened for Gango and Enti, so trying to get control of the bushes, I suspect.
Yeah, brush control important for both these champions. If Thresh is sat in a things like, yeah, Ezreal and Karma have the better DPS between the two champions, right? So if you land a death sentence from that brush, things go pretty badly. And they were setting up for an invade. They missed the ward. It's still going to be vertical jungling from the looks of it, because there are 4 players down towards this bot side. Gango maybe was looking to fish for a shot over the wall.
Enti's still there.
I was thinking, okay, maybe we can go for a Death Sentence hook, but he mistimes the Krug spawn, and in fact actually takes 100 HP for his for the trouble.
That's a bit of a galling one, a bit frustrating. Of course, it does mean that Yuhi and Proud aren't in lane straight away, which is sometimes what Karma's and Ezreal's like to do to make sure they get lane control. But it does set once up for a very strong option, and it does set up for vertical juggling. It leaves Ray Farkey on an island, and he leaves him on an island versus Renekton and Italy, which could still be problematic for Burning Core.
How did you beat CGA in the last year, particularly in summer when they were in the Ascendancy? You put Gango behind. We've seen what he was like from ahead. We've seen that earlier today from DFM. Scary guy, scary champion, scary players all around. If you put him behind, they often haven't had that same degree of safety to play around that bot side of the map. Once now, making sure that they're kind of holding themselves to account. But Gango getting a decent trade means that actually they don't necessarily have the HP that they would like to have to play around maybe a possible dive scenario, and they haven't managed to zone them off of enough XP in this early game to stop them getting an early level 2.
Yep, the level 2 comes through, out comes the Onslaught, the healing comes through from Severum, and Proud gets chunked for his trouble. That will be all of that. Also worth pointing out, of course, with Proud going on towards the Exhaust and Yuhi on the heal, it's not necessarily the strongest combat summoners. They're kind of a little bit more defensive rather than aggressive. So maybe not the easiest 2v2 to win off pure summoners versus the Ignite heal on the other side as well.
That's true. You're less likely to land the one skill shot, which then leads to getting kills in the 2v2. But you are more likely to still have that retained lane pressure. Like we said, the poke advantage goes over to this Ezreal Karma. The DPS advantage tends to go over to this Ezreal Karma. Yuhi, I think, actually could have just straight up autoed to poke that W. Ends up going for the Q, misses it, doesn't get that full damage trade. Gango turns around for a couple of autos. And it feels like Gango and Enti are not in the worst situation they could be in this lane.
I agree. I also see Ray Farkey hanging on. He's got a ward on where Crash is, but there's an Italy there, and we've already been mentioning what could go wrong. But now Ramane, he's got a Ghost Blade, so a fair amount of speed, but it's about to get wrapped around by Wanzu. He throws down the smoke screen and starts quick drawing forwards. Unfortunate wall shape means that Wanzu can't get the end of the line far enough forward at the right angle, and Ramane just keeps his way close to the wall and gets to walk away. The bane of Graves' existence.
Damn you, geometry. That's what I take away from this play. Suppose got to look towards this top lane now as well, because, okay, we're saying, right, vertical jungling, that normally means that stuff's going to happen on the other side of the map. Ray Farkey's been zoned out of CS, still has pot, still has the ability to regen up off that passive, and hasn't been dove as of yet. And he's walking up, Gango. This is another thing, right? There's a lot of magic damage between Ezreal Karma. Felos doesn't have a great deal of base magic resist. It's second lowest base magic resist in the game. The only other champion having lower being Yuumi. Yuumi's not really a champion when they're stood
Yuumi's
on
a
the
count in
run.
a book.
That doesn't, cat book doesn't really count in the same way. So you have something like 19 base magic resist. That means that Karma landing those soul flares, the empowered inner flames, does do a lot of damage in this early game. You can see that he has no pots. He's still down at half HP. Yuhi and Proud winning that HP battle.
Looks like Once was probably on vision when he came in for that invade, but that Scry's Bloom will ensure that he spots and will take it away. And this early game has been relatively stable. It's slight gold advantages over to Sengoku, but nothing super serious. I suppose that's mostly, honestly, from looking up at this top lane, but Ray Farkey will collect a lot of this wave under tower, and we're not going to see too much in terms of difference right now, at least this early on.
No, not quite yet. So I guess we're looking at this new iteration of Sengoku, which is trying to play a little bit more reserved, not going for the crazy crash. Kind of ganks in the early game. I mean, last game was high impact as a result of just reacting to the aggressive plays that DFM was making, but Paz actually takes a bad trade and Once is up here. Okay, guess I was wrong.
He had no vision, and suddenly he's in so much trouble. Gets a decent healing from the Cole the Meek. Still not enough, and he goes down to first blood, but that does mean that Yuhi and Proud could now be in a lot of trouble. The Binding Eclipse comes through. Yuhi flashes away, though, from the flash hook. So now he's okay. The exhaust coming through. Shield from Dark Passage keeps NT alive, but it is a much-needed flash from Yuhi to keep himself safe there.
Infernum Gravitum, what a combo. Gets the Q onto both Ezreal and Calm, which means that the Gravitum is immediately procced. That's a good amount of damage coming through. Sets up for the hook, but the cleanse is used by Yuhi. I wonder whether it would have been better to go for Proud, who doesn't have the cleanse available, but they might just go for a 2-man dive onto this bot lane to, we'll say, 3-man against the 2-man dive on the bot side.
Spear misses, and that might force Crash away. There's a teleport on Ray Farkey. He's got level 6, so they could definitely turn it around. Spear hits onto Yuhi, though, so that could be it. Here comes everybody else, though. LJLOU had to shift away as Ramane left the sleeper. Look into the Dragon Pit. Teleport's coming through now. Once hopping forwards, Ray Farkey slides his way over the wall. Flash from Ramane to avoid the cask, and everybody disengages.
Everyone disengages. Wave lost topside. 2 waves going to be lost in total to that top lane turret. And Yuhi at least managing to retain some lane presence at that bot side, not forced out of lane on his low HP. Ray Farkey giving up some individual advantages, looking for a team play. Doesn't find anything. At least gets the flash away from Ramane.
And that was close to being really nice. You could see they found a bit of an angle, but Ramane's pretty quick on Zoe and has the flash to get out from that. Cask, and yeah, loses a couple waves. It kind of nullifies that first blood advantage that came through. And it stabilizes this game. Again, not much in it right now. About 500-ish gold, if that. And we kind of sit back with a fair amount of summoners burned across the board.
I think I want to check in on just one thing quickly. Well, rather we've been talking a little bit on our podcast about the problems that Burning Core have because they've had a number of them. Looks like Paz will be fine in his top side, so I'm free to talk for a little longer. And we were thinking, okay, where's that damage coming from if Yuhi's not really performing, if Once is not really performing, and if GalliAddU's been struggling in this mid lane, right? The one game where we saw out of GalliAddU on this Azir against, I believe it was Axes in their first round matchup, when we saw him play against Megamin's Seraphine, was really important for this team. And I'm really happy with seeing a return to the Azir from GalliAddU, even if it hasn't been the most reliable champion across the world. It always has the ability to do damage. It has the playmaking opportunity for a lot of these more experienced mid laners too, like your Ramanes, like your Arias, like your GalliAddUs too. The players which you normally think, yeah, give them some agency and they'll do something with it. It gives you kind of a bit of the best of both worlds. You can understand why it doesn't work out for all the players, and you kind of get frustrated seeing Faker on it every game, for instance, but it's not like you have a shortage of agency, and I wonder if this is going to be an important pick for Burning Core.
Once getting jumped on here, but does get the smite for the additional healing. Out comes the end of the line. Once trying to hop around it, smite for smite right now, going towards the blast cone. Once does use it and gets out because he knows the Paz is on the way. Red buff resets, but Sengoku Gaming do get away with the steal.
Ooh, Crash. Battle warding eventually. Takes about 9 minutes to get to that point, but takes away a red buff and walks away with a bit of a prize.
Oh,
Ramune
gets of it. That's disastrous. Gariaru was inches away from that. And I'd love to see the replay if we ever get it from the official stream about how on earth Ramune got after. I thought he was caught by the last soldier. It's just the angle.
At first rank as is was only about 4 or 5 soldiers wide. It's not that long. Does mean that Ramune manages to just about get out of dodge.
They're still thinking you're going for this. Once is in the jungle here, but crashes on his blue buff. I don't know whether this is for the invader or for the dive onto Ramune, who's out of mana.
Well, he has heal. It's a little bit dangerous, particularly when you have the doubly leveled up. It gives you extra move speed on top of the move speed that heal already gives you in that momentary burst. That's a lot of disengage potential. It's one of the reasons why Zoe can be so frustrating to play against. Those summoner spells have extra value on top of the one that they already give you.
There were a fair amount of control walls for Burning Core in this river, by the way, but NT is roamed up, and they are here in force, are Sengoku Gaming, but Reifaki coming down, looking to cause a little bit of strife for Sengoku Gaming. Down to about 400. It's taken, I believe, by Crash, the Reifaki. Got in a position to maybe try and steal it, but well managed by Crash to ensure the burst is there.
On the other side, though, Gango in the left alone in this 1v1, getting a CS advantage, getting 3 plates solo. There's a fellow who we thought was going to get pushed under turret and have a bit of a hard time in the vertical jungling. Has managed to succeed, maybe even thrive in this situation.
And I've also just got to call out, that is Sengoku making a play for the Herald while also getting plates on the other side of the map. Like, you should not be able to get your cake and eat it on that level. That is not a good look for Burning Core.
Well, not even just eats it, they're getting fed off of it, particularly Gango. He's got himself even more damage on turret. This might be a solo turret coming down just from solo 1v1 AD carry laning, right? Yuhi has that sheen, has a decent amount of wave clear, but Aphelios, if he's fighting through a wave and has the correct weapons, does a lot of damage in the 1v1 scenario. And Gango's been using that very effectively. And of course, Yuhi has the heal and has the cleanse instead of the
Crash!
Make it 2 for 2. Crash gets 2 buffs stolen in the last 2 spawned.
Oh, that's so frustrating. It's not even like he had vision. He just saw Gariaru coming over. He's like, well, this is the time to throw my spear, then they'll have set it up. And they had, incidentally, for Crash to steal.
They have done. Herald, of course, still available for Crash. And this is one of the things which Crash has been more famous about in his career. Oh, that's a lot of damage.
That was Spear and Bubble coming through. Does a lot of work. Once is still alive, though. They won't quite manage to get it. They'll still throw down that Herald and get most of the plates in mid because Gadiar had to back to get some damn mana. And Sengoku Gaming, some really smooth early plays on terms of map pressure and plays around these buffs and turrets. Check across the map. That is at least 3 turret plates in every single lane. It's 4 in mid. I believe it might well be 4 in bot as well.
It's definitely heading up towards that point. Yeah, it has. Yes. The 4th one has been taken. So lane domination from Sengoku Gaming, and this is something we've talked about with regards to Burning Core before. Their laners have just not done well this split. We wanted more out of Gadiaru, this player who succeeded so much on the Axes of 2020. Has not really found that same success on Burning Core, and Burning Core we're looking to build upon a strong finish to 2020. Even though they ended up losing in the first round of playoffs, they made playoffs. They took DFM to 5 games, who were our finalists. This is not the split which they really would have wanted. Now sat at 3-7, looking down the barrel of a hefty early game lead to Sengoku 2. This is not happy days for Burning Core.
It's 3,000 gold at 12.5 minutes, purely off. Reifaki teleporting away gave Paz the chance to get a couple plates in that top side. Gariaru being forced to back just then because he had no mana, plus the Herald did a number of the mid lane tower. And then we saw what happened with the Herald play was going on. You just lost a load of plates under tower, partly because Aphelios has more shove and partly because of lane management.
It is. I also think that Burning Core didn't lane well or trade well when the vertical jungling was being set up. Gango should not have had that easier time and trade back the way he did against the Ezreal Karma early into the game when you know that you're going to get pushed under turret. I think that the 2v2 from Yuhi and Proud failed in that regards, whereas on the other side, Gango and NC, they found the opportunity and said, all right, okay, well, this is your game plan. This is a simple way it falls apart. We take better trades than you.
They do, and they run Ezreal Karma and don't even get a single plate in that bot side as yet. And they've got 40 seconds to find more than 1 plate in the mid lane. basically is the name of the game for Burning Core, which is just huge parts of this discrepancy right now.
And Sengoku on the other side of this, we said they needed a dominant performance. They're sat at 6-5, but that was after a 4-4 early split where we were kind of questioning their form. You take it in after that point that they're only, I guess, they're only 2-1. One of those being, well, both of them, I suppose, being against, both the one win and one of those losses being against DFM. Going 1-1 against DFM and having that second game go so close means a lot to them because, I mean, we're looking at the region now as LJL, and now, I mean, MSI has been confirmed to be going ahead. Suddenly that adds a lot of emphasis onto the split, saying, all right, you want to be a top team? Now there's something really to win from that too. Sengoku looking down at Rascal Jess, the V3 and DFM, and saying, okay, we need to go step up. We'll need to make it through the lower bracket. We're unlikely to make it through into that bye in the Juggernaut match in the first round of playoffs, but we do want to still be MSI representatives.
Once trading off with Crash here, does a fairly good job of it. Actually, here comes the teleport behind. NT has been taken to about 20% HP. Teleporting in. They want this super hard. There's the slide, but the flash comes through. NT now in trouble, getting shoved away. Gango trying to get the Crescendum on. Gets a lot of damage. That flashes in with Crescendum running the Chakram Slay. Everybody, Rayfaki goes in. Knocks Gango back. And that was well played to turn one back around. It will be a 2-for-2 right now as Crash has claimed the jungler's life. Nice plays from Burning Core, but Gango, you just can't let him stand and fire. That was disgusting stuff, and good lord! Brown nearly goes down as well, but does survive. And Ramane starting to throw out some damage here on this Zoe to back up everything else.
Last year, Gango was one of these players that would win or lose you the game on those flash plays going forward. Rayfaki for his team was a similar archetype of player. We see them both pop off in that fight. One with Gango turning around onto Gadiadu, and the other one with Rayfaki making sure that it didn't go too far out of hand. Now we have turrets falling across the board in the favor of Sengoku, and that's very important because now Burning Core and the aftermath of that play losing more than they bargained.
Right, pass to go forward for a trade there. He's going to get run out of the jungle, but that will now be every single outer turret down for Sengoku, and Burning Core have not managed to trade back a single one as yet, and that is where most of this gold is coming from. Now, NT, though, does step forward and got rooted in place, takes a lot of damage as Yuhi feels empowered to start shifting forwards to keep throwing that damage out. And, yeah, some nice little skirmishing there from Burning Core, but it was equally good skirmishing from Sengoku, and we've already said that it's not the skirmishing that's necessarily the problem, it's just laning that's been really problematic, and just losing so many turret plates across the board to the point now we're at 16 minutes. They're about to lose the second Herald. They've already lost first Drake, and they're down 3 turrets to none.
You should never lose solo first turret in a vertical jungling setup on your strong side of the map. That is that is such against the runner play. And because Burning Core had set up a game plan to get an advantage from that, they gave up other things across the map. They gave up Rayfaki and his lane pressure on the Gragas. Going back to this replay now, and much more relevant things in terms of how these fights are going across. Gango gets a huge amount of chakram stacks up from the ultimate coming through. He flashes right in, use the increased attack speed when you are auto-attacking from lower range from Gango's Aphelios. And Sengoku at least walk away with a couple of kills when they did lose both of their bot laners. It could have gone much worse for Sengoku.
I also appreciated the split-second decision-making, the call from Gango to not take the Lantern for once, because if he had done, they would both
double flash into death.
Yeah, exactly. They would have been shuffled by Galio, and it would have been done. I think staying in the bush, out of vision and kind of splitting things up gave them the chance to at least go 1-for-1 there, which isn't necessarily what you want, but at least gets you something back. Whereas I think otherwise you just lose both people there, as Galio had the really nice flank.
We've got the good old JRAM setting up, and this is definitely working in one team's favor rather than the other, because one's got a Zoe and a Nidalee, and the other one's got the Ezreal, who's not really hitting that much right now. As that being said, though, Sengoku do lose out on the wave push. Hooks are missing. Spear's certainly not, though. One's going to half HP already.
He is down to 1.5 HP. Rayfaki takes a bit of a chunk from a bubble. Ocean Drake has spawned, and Vision Control is being fought over fairly fiercely here, but Rayfaki off to one flank, Paz a little bit further on the same flank. And that's kind of all we're left with right now is Gango trying to get some wave control with the rest of Sengoku down here. Wants to get chunked out to about half HP, though. And Galio having to go claim the wave in the top side, I think just means they're going to have to give up this Drake, and the Herald being summoned on the other side. Sengoku just pulling Burning Core around.
So it's not going to kill a turret in its entirety, but Galio has no flash. Looking to see if there's a ult steal from Yuhi, just actually ends up leashing it a little further for Gango, unfortunately. Sengoku, again, having a very measured early game. This isn't the game they had against DFM, where they get a little feisty with a lot of solo kills coming in across the board. Sat now, even though they are down 1 kill, they're up 4,000 gold, make that 4,500 up to Dragons, and it will be a Cloud Rift for the second time today, I believe.
Looks like. Just waiting to see how this one obviously all plays out. Gadiadu still starting to get this shove onto the top side. Did, as we said, have to move up to that top wave because just in risk of losing too many waves. And that was happening kind of across the board. Part of the problem of losing all your outer towers, it does get harder to maintain your waves. And Sengoku Gaming have definitely been doing a better job of that thus far into the game.
Got a lot of item completions coming through now as well. All the mythics pretty much built up across the board, apart from Proud on the Karma, but as a support, you often do fall behind in the item race, because the nature of the role means you do get less gold. There isn't enough, there aren't enough lanes and, of course, jungle camps to support 5 people farming, so the support has to have a couple more mechanics to give them more gold across the game. Sorry, Medic, I know you're a bit, fighting for supports and their gold, but the nature of the game makes it quite hard to do that.
It does a little. Also call
Bring back
out,
harder
of
gold.
course, speaking of people with a lot of gold, Gango has completed 2 items, namely that Kraken Slayer and the Runan's Hurricane, which puts him way ahead of the curve compared to everybody else on the map. And you can see the AI bot definitely favoring Sengoku Gaming. I saw the
Hang on
blue.
a second.
I saw blue and went wait, and then I saw it's the blue line for blue side. But color management in my head going a little wrong there. Either way, 86% is a very hefty win percentage, and hard to disagree with right now with the scaling, with the gold on the right people right now. And, Yuki's gone towards the Essence Reaver first, so he's still waiting on his Mythic. And Burning Core just need more time, and the problem is giving more time to Zoe to get up to a Void Staff, more time to Aphelios to start working towards a 3rd item. It sounds pretty disastrous to me.
Because the thing is, though, you can say, okay, we can wait for time for the Azir and the Ezreal to do something special and to get more items. The problem is, when you're stalling like that, you're not stalling against, I don't know, an Orianna and something else, right? You're dealing with a Nidalee and a Zoe, both of which can just hit one skill shot around an objective, and suddenly you don't really get to stall anymore. You lose yourself an important objective, and that turns the story of these games.
Yes, it does, and I think part of the problem as well is I don't know how easy it will be for Burning Core to get to any of these towers. As Gango has gone for a gank of all things. He roams down to help out with Paz. The explosive cast comes out. Rayfaki gets the belly slam to try and keep chasing it down and running away, but look, there's a wave and there'll be a slice and dice available. Rayfaki trying to match it. Dominus comes out. Flash away from Rayfaki. So much damage available. No rage, and Rayfaki does get to walk out. It's flash for flash on the top line, but that does also mean that Gango being down bot alongside Paz means that maybe Burning Core can start up this Baron. Is that an overstep for Sengoku?
I don't think they start Baron. They don't have a Leandries on the Azir, which means the Baron damage is a tad lower, even though your Magic Pen is very nice coming in from that item. It does mean they lose top lane outer turret. That'll be the first turret of the game coming in for Burning Core. Actually, the wave just cleared. Not sure they clear on that wave. And actually, Sengoku, they're just so far ahead in terms of their map pressure, and the chip damage they already had on turrets means that they once again get themselves something out of this trade where it should have gone pretty badly for them, honestly.
They do at least get 1 turret back, but it's still traded. That inner turret on the bot side went down, as we said, and they finally got a tower to their name. But it's still looking a little bit rough right now for Burning Core. No more than a little bit. It's looking like 5,000 gold rough, which is often game-winning, frankly. As Yuhi hopped forward to do some damage and did precisely nothing there, actually, going forward, which is a little bit sad. And that was after we just got his 2nd item complete. But there's just a lot of shielding there that did a lot of work. Proud backstepping with a little additional speed from... It's not Defiance, it's the non-empowered version of the shield that I always forget the name of. Either way, Karma Shield.
Something like Inspiration or Inspire or something. Something like that. Yeah, one of those
that. It might be right, actually. Either way.
Look, I'm not a Karma aficionado. All I know is that Karma is a very bad woman, as you said once on cast.
I did indeed.
So, I mean, I guess checking in... so the thing is, though, Ezreal does have his 2-item spike, and he's got... it's not the 2-item spike. It's not going to be the old Trinity Force Manamune transform into the Muramana later into the game. But he does have a lot of CDR. You do get 20 ability hacks from both those items, 20 from the boots as well, going up to 60. And then, of course, you get an extra 5 coming in from the Duskblade's Mythic passive because the Essence Reaver has been completed too. So actually, that's a lot of skill shots coming out, and a lot of skill shots landing onto him.
He did have to cleanse there because there was no one who could body block once, also down to about half HP. Ramune has gone golden. Not quite sure why that one happened. Bubbles coming flying through.
Because
Rayfarki.
Rayfarki tried to ult back into the team.
That's
Didn't
what
end
it was.
up,
I was.
dodges out on that, so Rayfarki now without an ultimate, although he was quite far ahead of his team. This just ends up being an extended poke battle yet again, but one which neither team's really getting sizable advantages in.
Okay, so good stopwatch then from Ramune to avoid getting shoved back in. I was looking elsewhere briefly at Yuhi saying, oh my days, he nearly died, and missed out on that explosive cast, which was a little bit silly, but there we go. I have unfortunately got a color caster who, for once, has eyes to spot out what was going on. And we've got a Cloud Dragon that has spawned, Sengoku with control over the river, and Paz will start it up. And I don't think Burning Core feel content to go and even contest it, and it'll be sole point going the way of Sengoku without a look in from Burning Core at all.
No, but the thing is that you look at this team of Sengoku and it's like, well, do I care about giving up a Cloud Dragon? Do I care about giving up a Cloud Soul? No, not really. It feels like this is a free shot for Burning Core to get something else around the map, stall out the game, get themselves a bit more gold if Sengoku have to give up a side lane presence or something like that to claim themselves that dragon. The staring down Cloud Soul point, not the most detrimental thing in the game for Burning Core, particularly because they do have that range advantage, and of course there's a form shifter on the other side for Sengoku in the form of Nidalee, and also, yeah, Zoe is not someone who uses that Cloud Soul well, actually, Cloud Dragons in terms of ultimate cooldown reduction,
Cloud Dragons
not
are nice,
awful.
yes.
Cloud Dragons are nice for likes of stuff like Zoe and LeBlanc, who use their ultimate effectively every time it's available. On the other side, someone like Nidalee, who is a form changer and doesn't get much use out of. I mean, the very worst one is Quinn, right? Because you don't have a cooldown on your ultimate effectively. It's just the cast time, and that doesn't get reduced at all. It doesn't change your functionality as a champion. So at least someone like the Zoe is going to get some marginal value out of that Cloud Dragon, and Burning Core happy to give that one up.
Yeah, and they kind of traded it to at least get some of these towers down. They do get that outer tower and mid down, and it makes their job of like contesting for waves and therefore objectives a little easier in the future. It's not necessarily a trade they would want to make ideally, but it's one they have done considering the game state they're in. They're still down 5,000 gold, but at least it hasn't extended over the last 5 minutes or so.
Just chose the worst time to go for a drink. Then I'm like, oh yes, I should start speaking now. Yeah, okay.
I thought that'd be a nice way to leave you space to talk about things. Instead, leave you choking on your. Are you drinking tea or coffee? Actually, good question.
I got a couple right now. I've got a cup of tea. Look, Sam, if there's one thing which does link the British and the Japanese, it is that tea. And if there is one stereotype of the British people, which I do take with me, I do drink a little bit much of that. If anything, I have a bit of a caffeine dependency. That is another problem for another day, and one probably not to bring up on cast. So to bring up my parents, probably.
I'll have a word with them after this, eh? All right, well, anyway, Earl Grey aside, we're going to move on and see whether this game is going to go anywhere anytime soon. It's been relatively stable, as you can see, for about 5 minutes. It's kind of leveled off with Sengoku having got a lead, but this is always sometimes the issue is like there's this kind of stall period, 20 to 20, well, 25-ish, where it's like, okay, can we shove easily on these tier 2s? No. Can we really start Baron that easily? No. You're kind of waiting on often dragon spawns or catching somebody out to start Baron uncontested, because you don't really have the HP bar to just continually Baron bait until probably around now, honestly.
One important thing is that Rayfarki basically doesn't take damage from Renekton at this point.
No.
It has the Frostfire Gauntlet. We have that written in beautiful colors on
I know.
on our prep document because we
keep
forgot
calling
it one
it
time.
Iceborne.
And it's just like Iceborne. It's not Iceborne anymore. It's the Frostfire Gauntlet. And he has the Randuin's Ohm and a number of other armor items coming in on top of that with the Bramble Vest, right? Which means that the side lanes from Sengoku aren't looking that advantageous. Yuhi gets hit by a Skull Shot, still had cleanse, and the spear was tanked by Gaudaru instead. Once now a little out of position. Yuhi takes so much damage.
Ramune just hops forward. The Sun Disc will be summoned. And all the while, there's been a top wave just completely sacked to tower. Burning Core just losing out on gold, losing out on waves and experience in some of these side lanes. They're only really feeling confident to play 2, and it's costing them a lot of this golden CS in the sidelines. Rayfarki is looking for the teleport. He has got a ward he can come in on. He's got a couple. The observers have been very nice to show us all of that. I'm not going to pull that trigger, though. And instead, Rayfarki will start moving towards that top lane, try and collect this wave. And the gold remains about even, but we're seeing some of the issues Continue.
Two things which are kind of we can call back to at this point and say, okay, we talked about Burning Core probably wanting to stall out, but that's a problem versus your Nidalees and your Zoes, because if you do that versus that kind of team comp, occasionally skill shots will land and force you out of a phase of play. That means that actually Burning Core might even give themselves up a Baron for the price of Gallardo going down to clear out that bot wave. And another
teleport.
thing, and the teleport is going to come through actually. So we see Gallardo use the teleport
On the wave?
I
I mean, he burned that. Did it get cancelled somehow? Or did he just teleport somewhere completely off?
Did he?
I think he teleported on the wave. I think he was in bot lane and teleported on a minion.
It's been like 2 years. There's got to be a replay of this. There has to be. So Gallardo is down towards bot side. Similarly, the observers need to explain this to us, because what the heck happened there? So we see
he teleported the sun disc that dies.
the sun disc times out, so he gets his teleport effectively self-cancelled. Gallardo now back in that mid lane. At least Burning Core didn't lose anything for it. They didn't lose that Baron. They still pushed in towards that bot side of the map. Very strange from Burning Core. And now they, in their fit of rage, start Baron themselves.
Rayfaki is on a flank and is off vision. Sengoku needs to be a bit careful, and Gango here could absolutely end up getting flanked on. Rayfaki over the wall is now on vision, and Sengoku back away. Calibrum throws out a sniper shot. And both teams find themselves on the wrong sides of the map. But Burning Core, for all of having started the Baron, didn't really burn a teleport or anything like that, and once won't find any camps to steal on his little jaunt towards Wolves. Instead, Sengoku with a wave will shove into mid lane tier 2 and say, fine, come fight us, we'll take this. Rayfaki's gone in, tried to cast back, trying to force people away, but now he's in a bit of trouble. Does get to back away, is very tanky. Crash, steps forward, trying to get some more damage, takes a lot himself. The burn is fairly significant, and the mid lane tier 2 will fall, but Crash inches away from death, but NT's Lantern will save life. Proud is getting flashbacks to yesterday of his own Lantern, saving people who perhaps shouldn't have been, but they'll get the turret, they'll get out, and they'll move towards his Cloud Dragon, which will be Cloud Soul, and instead Burning Core say, screw it, we've got to start at Baron and force you to come fight us again.
They have the Azir. Ezreal's not bad at his Baron damage either. Rayfaki on the flank, but without ultimate or flash this time.
They're on to NT, who's taken very low. He has to flash away. Gary Harris throws those soldiers forwards, and they conquer indeed. Paz in the front line does get the heal and get to back away. It's a man down, but it's only to support, and Burning Core will pull back to Baron with the man advantage. Sengoku Gaming, though, certainly have damage to try and force people away. It's Nidalee and Zoe available to start showing things like bubbles like that, but there is a cleanse. They're going to step forward again. Crash has gone golden. Rayfaki very low to Paz. Gango throws out the Moonlight Vigil, but it doesn't get as much light, but the spear lands onto the key carry. Yuhi is dead. He won't avoid that one once, trying to fight out with the Mortal Shield bow. He's got a lot of healing. He's got a lot of shielding. Gariara goes forward, but dies anyway, and Gango just stands and delivers. Ramane flashes forward. Rayfaki's on the side, does get Crash. And somehow, someway, they'll get Proud as well. It's a triple to Gango. Infernum, Severum burns them all.
Gango set up to succeed by his team's poke, their team fighting, and their peeling for the FLLs. Fun fact, Ramane used to be on Detonation Focus Me during their heyday of 2019 into 2020 as well, I suppose, well, no, it was just that 2019, purely for the purpose of playing Zoe, because Sirius was not a player of that champion. You can see why the best team historically in the region would want to pick up the likes of Ramane from games and performances like this. When you start lining up around the Baron, it is an absolute shooting gallery for that champion. He doesn't even start off that close to the fight in this way, but he gets right into the middle of things. For me, the key moments here are when, obviously, that bubble zones that Gallardo for so long. They don't have the soldiers there. He's not setting up anything. They go back onto that Baron. And then there is a series of bubbles which just keep hitting onto Yuhi. Cleanse blown first. Yuhi probably should have just not, shouldn't have been stood in front of the other member. And the second one is when he walks up here trying to get some damage down. And he has flash available here. He doesn't end up flashing away from the spear. It was visibly heading towards him. Then when the Ezreal goes down, the damage is just not really available. Gallardo is way too low and once can't assassinate Gango.
Oh, no mana, but just doesn't have the health button. You can understand Gary saying, well, I've got to try and get something here. It just doesn't work out. Rayfaki does at least take Crash, which, of course, is something, but that is not what you wanted to see, especially in the 4v5.
It's the worst of all worlds. Burning Core wanted to stall out on that Baron, trying to find something for themselves, while giving up the Cloud Soul because they didn't really care about giving that over. They gave over the Cloud Soul anyway, the Baron goes down, and now you've got hugely fed members of Sengoku running across this map with an 8,000 gold lead.
That's a bit of an AD carry difference there. 3,000 odd between them. Gary Ari, as you said, got zoned out. That shows in the damage numbers. Rayfaki on once put some work in. They really did, but just look at the
Mm.
discrepancy from everybody else, and that's the problem.
It's one of the many problems for Burning Core. They don't find themselves the correct positioning, the vision control, their skill shot accuracy, and Yuhi keeps getting tagged by the poke. This is not the first time it's happened in this game. Heck, it's probably not even the 6th. Yuhi gets taken down to half HP. Every time that happens, Burning Core are then dissuaded from starting to take further fights.
Burning Core are a great team. They just need to work on wave control, laning, CSing, barons.
Skill shot
It's
accuracy.
there has been a lot in this one, unfortunately for them. And Twitch chat, copy pastas aside, we're seeing everything come crumbling down. It's 2 lanes already shoved into inhibitors, going down in a matter of moments between them. That's the top lane inhibitor turret, which is about to get shattered by a pair of cannon minions as well. There it goes, and they've got 1 inhibitor exposed, 2 inhibitors down, and Burning Core looking down the barrel of a 10,000 gold lead, and very little they can say about it.
Oh, Ramade's got caught out and burns the flash. That's the first real opening that Burning Core have found for the last few minutes. At least they get something away from the mid laner.
But they still lose the inhibitor. They're still down 3 inhibitors, and they've not even found a kill. They burnt a flash for 3 inhibitors. That is not... If that's your silver lining, it is a dark day indeed. And these storm
Somewhat
clouds
tarnished.
continue to brew. Yeah. I think the Thunder's about to start flying at this point, if it hasn't already, because it's 9 towers to 2, and they're caught with basically their nexus, and that is it as far as standing structures with a pair of towers outside it.
This is a real issue. Well, I mean, it's been a real issue for a while for Burning Core, but like they're not hitting the skill shots they need to. At least the Baron buff has fallen off. They're losing the poke war. They had themselves an Ezreal. They had themselves an Azir. They thought they could stand up to that. But going against the Zoe and the Nidalee, they've been outclassed by Crash and Ramune, have Gadiato and Yuhi on that regard. Part of that's about the vision control. Part of that's about their laning and how they can approach different angles to objectives. Yuhi, getting a little close to the Crocodile, and turns around with a bit of damage. Does take off half the HP, and that's about it, though.
Is indeed, and kind of see Burning Core trying to get their way out, but Ray Farkey, I think, might be in a spot to bother the sleep. Lands, throws out the cast to try and buy space, but it doesn't come out. The shields are there, but Ray Farkey can't walk fast enough and goes down in the side lane. Bit of vengeance for that earlier solo kill onto Crash by the Baron. Instead, Yuhi takes half his HP from incidental damage. That's another spear that just lands. Yuhi, you've got to dodge those. Every team fight, you've been hit by these. And that's another sleep that lands. Another one. Once Frozes in the rictus of throwing out that collateral damage, and Gango makes sure that Gadiato is in fact collateral damage. It'll be traded back by once. That's a shutdown. He's trying to trade, but it's just not enough. Crash has the magic damage. He has the execute, and it's Yuhi and Proud left to defend the Nexus turrets. He hops forwards into a sleep, has to cleanse, gets flayed back and goes down, and now it is Proud alone against the rampaging Sengoku Gaming, and they will stand and take the Nexus in a very convincing win.
So that ends up leading to a 3-1 super week for Sengoku, ending up at 7-5, still making their climb towards the end of this split. Burning Core in dire straits.
They are in dire straits. Sengoku, on the other hand, very much not. That was commanding across the board. But to take a little bit more from this, we're going to go to a very quick break. And when we return, it'll be an analyst desk. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the desk. Moss One, Initialize, I'm Era. We're back to recap and give our thoughts around the massacre which we witnessed between Sengoku Gaming and Burning Core. And we always build up this document. I'm going to lift the veil behind the scenes a little bit. What we do is, in between our break, whomever is on the desk make some points up.
Sure.
My points for this were Burning Core had early advantage. They drafted laning power, especially that the Karma, Israel. This is a lane that should be dominant. We saw something just like that yesterday, actually, didn't we? Initialize with Rascal Jester playing Ezreal, and it was really good. But Burning Core didn't do anything with it. They ended up losing any and all laning power, especially in that top lane, which they had to sacrifice as well. Rayfaki got kind of thrown to the side. And Sengoku ended up getting a 4.5k gold lead, 3 turrets, the plating, dragon, and Rift Herald, all before 15 minutes. And they don't have lane power. Like...
So, you've lost all your turret planing in every lane before 15 minutes. Captain America shield is down by the side. I don't think you can quite see my chair, but the point being that this is a situation, if you're playing a game, as I lean forward, and I think we've all got our head in our hands, where it is doomed at this point. You have basically had set up vertical jungling to allow Ezreal Karma to get lane pressure in bot lane. They lose first turret solo to Aphelios in a 1v1 AD carry matchup pre 15 minutes. Gary Arrow in mid lane has his blue buff stolen, forcing him to reset, which allows Crash and Ramane to get 2 plates and then summon Herald to get 4 in mid. Top lane, Rayfaki, having got first blood and looking pretty good on the top side, teleports bot lane to help out his bot lane with an attempted engage down there and loses 2 waves and 2+ turret plates in the top side. You have lost every single lane of different problems.
That's why it's so difficult, right? It is difficult to cast a game and be non-biased at this point because I know that we have a running narrative about some things about Burning Core because, of course, they have been a team that has struggled for a while. We've talked about Yuhi in terms of, well, we thought maybe he was that's a wonderful freeze frame from my face there briefly, actually.
That was gorgeous.
And there was
mouth wide open.
Yuhi was one of the bottom 2 AD carries from 2020 by most metrics. Even though in that one series versus DFM, they played admirably, if not very well in that series.
I would agree, yeah.
But we look at this draft, and there is just a blunt point where you just say, you're not good enough at laning, you've been hit by too many skill shots. There's a certain way that Burning Core was playing this game, waiting for it to stall out, play around objectives, and that fell apart because of individual misplays.
I mean, let's be real. Sengoku took this game rather slowly when they got that lead so early on. They were just able to be like, well, we can't lose this game. Let's play the alternative style, which is actually really exciting to see from Sengoku. And let's actually turn this on a dime a little bit. We saw them against Dana Nation Focus Me. They were scrappy. They were playing a very LPL, VCS even kind of style of play. And then against Burning Core here, we're seeing super career LCK kind of, we have an advantage, we don't need to throw any form of pressure, let's just destroy them in every facet of this game. Yeah, we might give up a turret, but we're going to get so much more through it, and this is what Sengoku Gaming did throughout a lot of this game, Nymera.
Yeah, because there is always the counterpoint saying, okay, well, bot lane went badly for Burning Core, they didn't play it well. On the other side, Gango's a really good Aphelios player.
Yes,
we saw
he
it in the
is.
team fights. We saw it in the early trades where level 2 particularly, he comes in and does some really good Severum combos, knowing that Proud has stepped up just a little too far. And that kind of means that the dive pressure is then off. They don't have the chunks going against them. They've healed up a lot. They've traded really well. And that's actually a lot from Gango's good play. We saw Ramane around different objectives, getting great poke combos. Same with Crash, right? There's also skill shot accuracy from the side of Sengoku as opposed to the dodging missteps from the side of Burning Core. Sengoku played well enough to play into the game plan that was happening, and they came away with a win. I mean, a lot of it is Burning Core playing badly, yes, but it's not like we detract from Sengoku's win in that way.
No, they played really well, and a moment that Sengoku really did pop off, and Gango, to use your point, Nymera, Initialize, Gango popped off around the Baron, and that Baron fight was the final straw for Burning Core. It was a long one. We could go into more points, but I feel like we'd be nitpicking at that point.
Yeah, sure.
This Baron was amazing, but Gango was well and truly prepared with red and blue guns, wasn't he?
He definitely was, and it was kind of looking potentially okay for Burning Core at the beginning. Ray
It
Fargi had a
was.
good flank, got the kill. It was only on to NT, which wasn't the highest priority target, but
But
they
that
get
was
him.
the target if Sengoku had a choice.
Exactly, and they have now a 5v4. Gariaru's kind of zoned off a little bit, and then basically Gango gets to throw down the Infernum and Crescendum and just stays safe from everybody. He gets a Moonlight Vigil onto Yuhi, which chunks him out to low enough that the spear that follows blows him up. He had flash, he didn't burn it. Maybe that changes things, but either way, the enemy AD carry is down. It's then a 4v4, and they just can't get onto this guy. Once tries to duel with him, and yes, this Graves is fairly strong, but it's not quite the same as having this Gango at full HP. There's a Aphelios running rampant with Crescendum stacked. And you watch Gariaru try to shift in, trying to get something, but he just pops him with a single auto at that point. He's too low to continue stepping forward. He goes down, he gets the triple, and it's GG from there if it wasn't already.
And to back up the other members that we haven't mentioned, obviously Crash was playing that Nidalee with the spear that you've mentioned. NT died for the sins of the team. But credit, and let's actually zoom back a little bit into that fight, because Nymera, you were pointing out, obviously, Ramune on this Zoe, the bubbles were landing were huge, and Paz's spacing for that fight allowed Gango to be doing so much of that damage, right?
Ramade was the Zoe player on DFM for 2019. Like, there was a reason DFM picked him up. It's like, right, okay, so it's not going to play it. Might as well go snipe that one other mid laner that's been really good in this region to do so. And Zoe from a winning map state has a lot of agency. Ramune used that agency immaculately this game. Had so many skill shots, a lot of bubbles landing onto important targets too. And it means that sometimes when you're up against a talented Zoe player, Baron fights become just suicide. That's what it was for Burning Core. Zoned out Gadiadu, got some key skill shots, ended up pulling his weight.
Well, we will have to find out how Burning Core go now, as there is one more game for them left to play, as well as Chris Gaming Act, and that's going to be the matchup we'll be seeing after this break. Ladies and gentlemen out there, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back in a moment.